Mom, I need you to understand something. This is Vanessa's day, and she wants it to be perfect. She says you make everything about yourself, so we've decided it's best if you don't come. I heard my own son say those words, clear as church bells on a Sunday morning. I was standing in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd taught him to tie his shoes, where I'd packed his lunches for 12 years straight, where I'd sat up countless nights, helping him with homework while fighting to keep my eyes open after double shifts. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I took a breath and said 2 words. I understand. Then I hung up. 45 minutes later, my phone showed 31 missed calls, his name flashing over and over like a warning light nobody could ignore. We'll get to that. But first, I want to ask you something. Where are you watching from right now? What time is it where you are? Maybe you're drinking your morning coffee. Maybe it's the middle of the night and sleep just won't come. Either way, I want you to do something for me. If this story feels familiar, if it hits somewhere deep, leave me a comment and tell me where you're listening from. And if you feel it in your chest, the way I felt it in mine, hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe. Because I promise you, you're going to want to know how this ends. Now, let me tell you who I am and how I got to that phone call. My name is Ruth Peterson. I'm 71 years old, and I live in Nashville, Tennessee. I've lived here my whole life, raised my babies here, buried my husband here, and learned the hardest lesson of my life right here in this little yellow house on Maple Drive. My husband Frank passed away when he was 52. Heart attack, no warning, no goodbye. Just a Wednesday morning when I reached over to wake him up and felt cold skin instead of warmth. The doctors said it was quick. They said he didn't suffer. I guess that was supposed to make me feel better. It didn't. Frank left behind 2 kids who still needed raising. Marcus was 14, all attitude and acne, and that particular brand of teenage anger that comes from losing a father too soon. Sarah was 11, quiet and careful, already taking notes on everything around her like she was studying for a test nobody else could see. Frank also left behind a mortgage, a truck that was more rust than metal, and an insurance policy that turned out to be worth about half what we'd been told. Some clause in the fine print. Some signature that should have been there but wasn't. The payout barely covered the funeral and 3 months of bills. I had 2 choices. Fall apart or figure it out. I figured it out. I took a job at the hospital as a patient care assistant. That meant 12-hour shifts, weekends, holidays, whatever they needed. I bathed patients who couldn't bathe themselves. I held hands when family members delivered bad news. I changed sheets and emptied bedpans and smiled until my face ached, all for $11 an hour. It wasn't enough. It's never enough when you're a widow with 2 kids and a house payment. So, I picked up work cleaning offices at night. 3 buildings downtown. I'd finish my hospital shift at 7, pick up fast food for the kids, help with homework until 9, then drive downtown and clean until 1 in the morning. Vacuum. Mop. Empty trash. Wipe down desks. Drive home. Sleep for 4 hours. Do it again. For 9 years, I did this. 9 years of my body aching in places I didn't know could ache. 9 years of drinking coffee like it was oxygen. 9 years of wearing the same 3 pairs of work shoes until the soles wore through and I stuffed cardboard inside to make them last another month. But Marcus got braces. Sarah got her dance lessons. The mortgage got paid. Christmas had presents under the tree. The kids never knew how close we came to losing everything. I made sure of that. I smiled through the exhaustion. I pretended the pantry was full when it wasn't. I told them we were fine, we were managing, we were going to be okay. Mothers lie sometimes. We lie to protect. We lie to give our children one more day of feeling safe in a world that already took their father. When Marcus turned 18, he wanted to go to college. Vanderbilt, he said, his eyes bright with a future I desperately wanted him to have. He'd gotten in, partial scholarship. It still wasn't enough. I took out a second mortgage on the house. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself he'd graduate, get a good job, and I'd pay it back. I told myself this was what mothers did. Sarah never asked for college money. She worked her way through community college, then got her nursing degree at a state school. She lived at home, paid what she could toward groceries, and never once made me feel guilty for focusing so much on her brother. I should have noticed that earlier. I should have seen what I was doing. But Marcus was always the squeaky wheel. Marcus always needed more, and I kept giving because I thought that's what love looked like. After graduation, Marcus moved to an apartment across town. Nice place, expensive rent. He was working at a marketing firm, making decent money, but somehow it was never quite enough. The car payment was too high. The student loans were crushing him. Rent in Nashville kept going up, so I helped. I always helped. A few hundred here for rent when his paycheck came up short, 1,000 there for car repairs. I covered his phone bill for a year when he was between jobs for 8 months. I bought his groceries when his credit cards were maxed out. I kept a little notebook in my nightstand. I wrote down every amount, not because I expected him to pay me back, but because I wanted to remember. I wanted proof that I was a good mother, that I'd done enough. The notebook filled up fast. When Marcus turned 28, he called me with news. He'd met someone. Her name was Vanessa, and she was wonderful, he said. Beautiful, smart, ambitious. I was going to love her. I met Vanessa on a Saturday afternoon at a restaurant she'd chosen downtown. The kind of place where the menu doesn't have prices and the portions are small enough to fit on a cracker. She was beautiful. I'll give her that. Perfectly styled blonde hair. Nails done in some complicated design that probably cost more than my grocery budget. Clothes that looked like they came from magazines. She smiled at me with teeth so white they almost glowed. "Mrs. Peterson," she said, not standing up to greet me. "Marcus has told me so much about you. All good things." "I hope," I said, settling into my seat. She laughed. A short, practiced sound. "He told me you're very generous, that you helped him a lot when he was younger." Younger. Like 26 was ancient history. "I did what any mother would do," I said. Vanessa tilted her head, studying me like I was a math problem she was trying to solve. "My parents believed in tough love. They cut me off at 18, made me earn everything myself. I think it built character." There it was. The first jab, disguised as a philosophy. "Different families, different approaches," I said carefully. Marcus jumped in then, eager to smooth things over. "Mom's always been there for me. She's the best." Vanessa patted his hand like he was a golden retriever who'd done a good trick. "Of course she is." The lunch lasted 2 hours. Vanessa talked about her job in real estate, her spin classes, her upcoming trip to Cabo with her girlfriends. She asked me exactly 3 questions about myself. What did I do before I retired? Was I still working? Did I own my house outright? That last one made my stomach clench, though I couldn't have told you why at the time. After Marcus walked me to my car, he hugged me tight. "She's great, right?" I think she might be the one. I wanted to tell him about the cold feeling in my chest, about the way Vanessa looked at me like I was being assessed for value, about the questions that felt more like an audit than a conversation. But he was smiling. He was happy, and I was his mother. "She seems very confident," I said instead. "I'm glad you're happy." Over the next 2 years, I watched my son slowly disappear. The phone calls dropped from weekly to monthly, then to whenever he needed something. When I called him, Vanessa often answered, "He's in the shower, he's at the gym, he's taking a nap, I'll have him call you." He never did. The engagement announcement came through a text message, not a phone call, not a visit. Just a picture of Vanessa's ring with 2 words, "We're engaged." I found out the same way strangers on the internet did, but I pushed down the hurt. I told myself young people communicate differently now. I sent them a check for $5,000 as an engagement gift. The thank you text came from Vanessa's phone, 1 line and an emoji. When they started wedding planning, I offered to help. I had some savings. I wanted to be part of it. Vanessa called me herself for the first time. Her voice was honey-sweet. "Ruth, that's so generous of you. We'd love your help. Marcus always said you were the family bank." Family bank. The words stuck in my throat like a bone. Over the next 8 months, I paid for the venue deposit, the flowers, the photographer's retainer, the caterer's down payment, the invitations, the linens, the cake tasting, the rehearsal dinner. Whenever I asked to be included in planning meetings, something always came up. Vanessa's mom is handling that part. We've got it covered. We'll send you pictures. I wrote down every expense in my notebook. $15,000. Then $20,000. Then more. Sarah called me one evening, her voice tight with something she was trying not to say. Mom, have you gotten your invitation yet? Not yet. They're probably sending them in batches. A long pause. Mom, I got mine 2 weeks ago. I've been waiting to see if you'd mention yours. My heart dropped. Maybe it got lost in the mail. Maybe, Sarah said. But we both knew better. I called Marcus that night. It went to voicemail. I called again the next morning. Voicemail. I texted. No response. 3 days later, he finally called back. That's when I heard the words that changed everything. Mom, I need you to understand something. This is Vanessa's day, and she wants it to be perfect. She says you make everything about yourself. So we've decided it's best if you don't come. I listened to the silence after he finished speaking. I could hear Vanessa in the background, whispering something sharp. Make everything about myself, I repeated slowly. Like paying for the venue? Like covering the flowers and the photographer and the caterer? That's different. That's just money. Vanessa says, you use money to control people. Something in my chest went very still. I see. Mom, don't be like that. We can celebrate after. Just the 3 of us. Vanessa said she'd be fine with brunch or something. Brunch. 30 years of sacrifice, and I was worth brunch. I understand, I said. You two have a lovely wedding. I hung up before he could say anything else. For a while, I just sat there at my kitchen table, looking at the same walls that had watched me raise him. The crayon marks from when he was 4, still faintly visible behind the bookshelf. The height chart I'd penciled on the doorframe, tracking his growth year by year. The window over the sink where I'd stood, washing dishes and watching him play in the backyard, dreaming of the man he'd become. This was the man he'd become. I pulled out my notebook. I added up the numbers one more time, just to be sure. The wedding expenses, $23,000. The years of support after college, roughly $45,000. The credit card I'd co-signed that he'd maxed out, $12,000. His car when the old one died, $18,000. Random emergencies over the years. At least $30,000 more. I stopped counting at $128,000. That didn't include the years I'd gone without so he could have. That didn't include the promotions I'd turned down because the extra hours would have meant less time to help him. That didn't include the retirement I'd postponed, again and again. $128,000. And I wasn't good enough to sit in a chair at his wedding. I called my attorney the next morning. Patty had helped me with Frank's estate, with the refinancing, with all the practical matters a widow has to handle alone. Ruth, she said, her voice cautious, are you sure about this? I've never been more sure of anything. These are big steps. Once you start, there's no going back. I know. The wedding vendors were first. The venue coordinator was confused when I called. Mrs. Peterson, the final payment isn't due until next week. I'm not calling to pay. I'm calling to cancel. Silence. Then a flurry of questions. I answered them calmly. Yes, I was authorized on the contract. Yes, I understood the deposit was non-refundable. Yes, I was sure. The florist was next. Then the photographer. Then the caterer. $8,000 in deposits. Gone. I didn't care. Some lessons are expensive. This one was worth every penny. Then I dealt with the credit card I'd co-signed. I called the company and removed myself as a co-signer. When they explained this might affect his credit limit, I said that was no longer my concern. The car I'd bought him was in my name. I'd never gotten around to transferring the title. I called my insurance company and removed it from my policy. Then, I texted Marcus something I'd never texted before. The car is registered to me. You have 48 hours to park it at my house. After that, I'm reporting it as stolen. 45 minutes after that last call, my phone started ringing. Marcus. Vanessa. Marcus again. A number I didn't recognize. Marcus. Vanessa. I watched the notifications stack up like a tower of everything he'd never said when he didn't need something. By evening, there were 31 missed calls, 12 voicemails, 47 texts. I read exactly one. Mom, what did you do? The venue just called. The florist said everything is canceled. Call me back right now. I turned my phone off and made myself dinner. For the first time in 30 years, I ate without wondering if someone else needed something from me. The wedding was supposed to be on a Saturday in October. I spent that day with Sarah. We drove to Gatlinburg, walked through the little shops on the main strip, and ate too much fudge. She didn't mention her brother. Neither did I. When I checked my phone that evening, there were 83 missed calls. The voicemails ranged from angry to pleading to threatening. The last one was from Vanessa. You vindictive, bitter old woman. You ruined the most important day of my life. Don't think we're going to forget this. My father is a lawyer. You'll be hearing from us. I saved that one. Something told me I might need it later. They came to my house on a Tuesday. I was in the garden, pulling weeds from around my tomatoes, when I heard car doors slam. 2 sets of footsteps on the driveway, one heavy, one sharp. I didn't look up until they were standing over me. Marcus looked like he hadn't slept in days. Vanessa's makeup was flawless, but her eyes were ice. We need to talk, Marcus said. All right. I stood slowly, brushing dirt from my knees. Come inside. They followed me into the living room, but didn't sit down. Vanessa stood with her arms crossed, scanning my home like she was calculating its value. You destroyed our wedding. Marcus started, his voice shaking. Do you understand what you did? We had to scramble. Vanessa's parents had to call in favors just to salvage anything. People saw. Colleagues, her boss. Do you know how humiliating that was? I imagine it was very humiliating, I said. That's it? That's all you have to say? What would you like me to say, Marcus? How about sorry? How about an explanation? How about anything other than that smug look on your face? I sat down in Frank's old armchair, the one I'd kept all these years because it still smelled faintly of him. You want an explanation? Fine. I spent 30 years putting you first. I wore the same winter coat for 7 years so you could have braces. I worked 2 jobs until my back gave out so you could go to college. I gave you money for rent, for cars, for emergencies, for credit cards you maxed out. I paid $23,000 toward a wedding I wasn't invited to. Money isn't everything. Vanessa cut in. Plenty of parents help their kids without expecting a parade. I didn't expect a parade. I expected a chair. 1 chair in a room I paid for. And you decided I wasn't even worth that. I told you, Marcus said. It was about the vibe, the aesthetic. Vanessa wanted a lot of things, I said quietly. And you gave them to her. But you couldn't give me basic respect. You couldn't give me a conversation before the decision was made. You called me to deliver a verdict, not to discuss anything. You're twisting this. Am I? Tell me, Marcus. In the last 2 years, how many times have you called me when you didn't need something? How many times did you ask about my life, my health, my day? How many times did you call just to hear my voice? He opened his mouth, closed it. I called last month, he finally said. For your birthday. That was Sarah who called. You texted. 2 words, happy birthday, no punctuation. Vanessa stepped forward. Look, we didn't come here to be lectured. We came to tell you that what you did was wrong. We're considering legal action. For what? I asked calmly. For canceling contracts I signed and paid for? For removing myself from a credit card with my name on it? For reclaiming a vehicle titled to me? Please, let me know how that works out. You're trying to control us, Marcus said. Just like Vanessa said, you use money to manipulate people. No. I used money to love you. There's a difference. And when you decided my love was an embarrassment, I simply stopped offering it in a currency you didn't respect. Vanessa grabbed Marcus's arm. This is pointless. She's not going to listen to reason. Reason? I stood up. You're standing in a house I've owned for 40 years, Married to a man I raised with both hands, wearing a ring bought with funds I probably contributed to, and you're calling me unreasonable. We're done here, Vanessa announced. Yes, I agreed. I believe we are. Marcus looked at me one more time. Something flickered in his eyes. Pain, maybe, or the ghost of the boy he used to be. I thought you loved me, he said quietly. I do love you. That's never going to change. But I love myself, too. Finally. And I won't disappear just to make you comfortable. They left, without another word. 6 months passed. The silence between me and my son stretched like a wire pulled too tight. I heard updates through Sarah sometimes. They'd gotten married at the courthouse. Moved to a smaller apartment. Vanessa's real estate career had slowed down. Money was tight. Part of me ached to help. The mother in me wanted to write a check, make a call, fix whatever was broken. But I'd spent 30 years fixing things for him. And all it had taught him was that I would always be there to catch him, no matter how badly he treated the net. Instead, I focused on myself for the first time in decades. I bought new clothes. Not fancy, just new. Clothes that didn't have worn seams or faded colors. I got my hair done at a real salon instead of the discount place that always made me look like someone's elderly aunt. I joined a book club at the library. Started volunteering at the hospital where I used to work, sitting with patients who had no one else. I understood loneliness now in a way I hadn't before. I understood what it felt like to give everything, and still end up alone. But I wasn't alone. Not really. Sarah came for dinner every Sunday. We talked for hours about everything and nothing. She told me once that she'd spent years feeling invisible next to Marcus, like the responsible child was less interesting than the chaotic one. I'm sorry, I told her, my eyes stinging. I'm so sorry I didn't see it. You see it now, she said. That matters. On the 1-year anniversary of that terrible phone call, I was sitting on my porch with a glass of sweet tea when a car I didn't recognize pulled into my driveway. Marcus got out alone. He looked older than 35. Thinner. The confidence that Vanessa had given him, or maybe the arrogance, was gone. Can I sit? He asked, gesturing to the empty chair beside me. I nodded. He sat down heavily, like his bones were tired. Vanessa and I are getting divorced, he said. I waited. She met someone else, some guy at her office. Moved out last month. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Turns out I wasn't worth much to her without the backup plan. I'm sorry, I said. And I meant it. Not because he deserved my pity, but because watching your child suffer is never easy, no matter what they've done. I've been thinking a lot, he continued. About that phone call. About everything before it. About everything after. He looked at me, and for the first time in years, I saw my little boy in there. The one who used to climb into my lap during thunderstorms. The one who said he'd love me forever. I was wrong, Mom. I was so wrong. She got in my head, and I let her. I let her convince me that you were the problem, that you were trying to control me, but you weren't. You were just trying to love me, and I threw it back in your face. I sipped my tea. Waited for more. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve that. But I needed you to know that I see it now. Everything you did. Everything you gave up. The years of work. The sacrifices. I see it, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. His voice broke on the last word. I set down my glass. Looked at this man who used to be my baby, who I'd held through fevers and heartbreaks and the death of his father, who I'd loved beyond reason, beyond sense, beyond my own well-being. I forgive you, I said finally. But forgiveness and trust are different things. Forgiveness I can give you right now. Trust takes time. He nodded, wiping his eyes. I know. I'll earn it. I promise. You promised a lot of things over the years, Marcus. I know that, too. He took a breath. I'm starting over. Got a new job. Smaller paycheck. But I actually like it. I'm in therapy, trying to figure out why I let someone else turn me against my own mother. Good, I said. That's good. We sat in silence for a while, watching the sun sink behind the trees. Can I come for dinner sometime? He asked quietly. Just dinner. I'll bring the food. You don't have to do anything. I thought about it. About all the years of one-sided giving. About how easy it would be to fall back into old patterns. You can come, I said, but things are different now. I'm not your safety net anymore. I'm your mother. There's a difference. I think I finally understand that. Good. He left an hour later. I watched his car disappear down the street and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not hope. Exactly. More like possibility. The door was open. Just a crack. What he did with that was up to him. I went inside and called Sarah. He came by, I said. I know. He told me he was going to. How was it? Honest. Painful. Maybe the beginning of something. How do you feel? I considered the question. Really considered it. I feel like myself, I said. For the first time in 30 years, I feel like Ruth Peterson, not just Marcus's mom or Frank's widow, or the woman who gives everything and expects nothing. That's beautiful, Mom. It is, isn't it? After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table with a new notebook. On the first page, I wrote a title, Things I Want. For 30 years, I'd kept notebooks about what my son needed, what my family needed, what everyone else needed. This one was for me. I started writing. A trip to the beach, a new garden bench, dinner with friends, a life that belonged to me. The pen moved easily. The list grew long. I looked around my little yellow house on Maple Drive. Same walls, same windows, same woman who'd weathered more storms than she could count. But something had changed. I had changed. At 71 years old, I finally learned the lesson I should have learned decades ago, that loving someone doesn't mean erasing yourself, that setting boundaries isn't selfish, that you teach people how to treat you, and I'd spent 30 years teaching my son that my love was a bottomless resource with no requirements attached. He'd learned that lesson well. Too well. But now he was learning a different one. And so was I. Before I go, I want to ask you the same thing I asked at the beginning. If someone you love treats you like you're only valuable when you're paying, when you're giving, when you're quiet and convenient, at what point do you stop funding your own disappearance? Think about that. And if this story meant something to you, if you see yourself somewhere in these words, I want to hear from you. Leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me if you've ever had to choose between being loved and being respected. Hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe. Because every one of us has a story about the moment we finally chose ourselves. This was mine. My name is Ruth Peterson. I'm 71 years old. I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm not anyone's backup plan anymore.